The only damage.
I almost went down right before I came here. Probably it's just like a shit.
Yeah,
I'm on that one of hers, same day that I live next door, and she lived on our sand, because ours was just a.
yeah. Like, we were just stressed because we were like, do we leave the horses in? Do we put them out? So I was out there at the tractor, just like banging down with the bucket.
We're streaming now, so I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. So I'm gonna call this special meeting to order. If we could all stand for election of that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
Under God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we don't have a clerk, so I'm gonna go and do the roll call.
I apologize ahead of time, I'm a little nervous.
Okay, Councilwoman Alba. Present. Councilwoman Sneedstack. Present. Councilman Coleman.
Here.
And I am here also Supervisor Annette. And we are also going to be joined, we're joined by our candidates that we're interviewing. First up is David Linscott at 10:30, followed by Renee Ciardi at 11:15. We've had one candidate withdraw, so our third and final candidate that we're interviewing today will be Zolly Wynn at 12 p.m. Then we'll have a brief town board discussion, and then we will adjourn. So, David, why don't you go ahead and join us at the head of the table? We wanted, this meeting is being streamed and will be on our YouTube channel
Okay.
for members of the public to see. Before we begin, I'll give a few words about the interview and how we're going to conduct it. But first, I just want to remind everyone that we are in a public meeting, public forum. We are interviewing people who have deep ties to the community, but just a note that we don't want to reveal any confidential personal information about people or discuss personnel issues or anything about individuals that we wouldn't want to be streaming online, especially as, you know, officials and employees of the town. So welcome, David.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
joining
you.
us. As you know, we are conducting interviews today at a special meeting to fill a vacancy on the town board. That because that vacancy happened after the election last year, we will be appointing, as a body, we will be appointing someone to fill that place. But that position, that specific seat will be on the November ballot. So
Okay.
our appointment term just goes to the end of the year.
Mhm.
And the remainder of that term is filled by the elective process. So what we're going to do today is we've allotted 45 minutes per candidate. We're getting started about 10 minutes late. And I'm gonna start by just doing the first 15 minutes of the interview and hitting similar questions for each candidate so that we have some consistency. Then about 30 minutes in, I'll open it up for more of a non-structured, like still structured, but interview with the board so that we can get a little bit more in depth about you as an individual and what you have to offer and anything that maybe came up in that first part of the interview. And then the board also might have things that they want to make sure that is asked to each candidate. So what I'd like though is you submitted a cover letter and a resume to us, but could you just take a few moments to introduce yourself and give a brief background and let us know why you think you'd be a good fit for the town board.
David Linscott, I've been here all my life, born and bred. I worked Bell's Christmas tree farm, beginning of my career, then Charles River for 36 years. And then now I'm the prison as a plumber. And I want to be a voice in my town to make it better. I don't know what else to say other than, you know, to try to improve it. And, you know, be good neighbors and help fellow man. You know, I 24 years at the first aid squad as a driver. So I volunteered for a few years. So now I have some free time. I would like to be a voice in this, in my town.
So, thank you for that. Just right off the bat, one thing that, I'm just curious about is you said you'd like to improve your town. Is there something in particular that you're thinking of, or in terms of improvements that you'd like to see happen?
Not off the top of my head, I have ideas, we're getting a lot of. Camps where they're not contribute to our tax base. I don't know what we can or can't do about that, I haven't researched it. They're here, they're not leaving. So, but that's one of my big objective, but. Having like the Pine Grove, Pine Ridge. Come off the tax map, that's, a big piece of property that's coming off the tax map, if it's coming off, Oh,
Currently, it's still,
okay, but you understand where I'm coming from, and, cause if, it does come up, that puts a burden on everybody else that lives in our community. So, I don't know if that's a good point or not, but it's, it's a point I have, improve the roads. Improve our fire system, EMS system.
thank you for clarifying that. So, just, we had some questions that the town board had brainstormed, and I put them together, so I'm just gonna hit a few questions.
Okay.
Before I open it up to the board. So first, just in terms of the town board itself, what are your thoughts on how this town board should function effectively?
We should all work together as a team. We have differences, we gotta work through them. We can't be at each other's throat, we gotta work, as a team, not, and I learned from Charles River many years ago. It's kind of corny, but it's factual. Team together, everyone accomplishes more. I don't know why that stuck with me all these years, but it did. And if people work together, that much easier. People work together and get rather than against one another.
Do you have any experience fostering? Like, what's your experience in fostering a team environment for like a board or working together?
I don't know how long I was president up there at the first aid squad. I was a short time. I was a group leader at Charles River for about a year. That's about all my leadership skills that I've done. I've always worked pretty much by myself, and always worked well with my squad leader on the ambulance, because you work together and you get more accomplished.
Have you, in terms of like the history of the town and viewing different town boards, has there for you been, do you have any ideas on, like, have you witnessed the town boards not working together as a team?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. And then, so in terms of like this, how the town board should move forward to be efficient and transparent, do you have any thoughts on what you'd like to see?
No, like you said, just to be transparent and because in the long run, we work for the people in our community. We're supposed to be representing the community. Like I was taught in the first aid squad. Our name is on the back of our shirts. We should hold ourselves a little higher than everybody else, because what they were doing, what we were doing. We're the the rescuers, you know? Like, he's a fireman, cause everybody's running out, he's running in.
Yeah.
You know,
Um,
sorry about that, but it is what it is, it's a true statement.
yeah. So, thinking more about like how what your needs would be as a town board member. So on the town board, there's a lot of reading.
Yes.
We, are approving contracts. We are editing and adopting local laws. There's a lot of information processing that happens.
Correct.
That is from basically reading and also talking and taking in feedback from agencies, from the public. Given the significant amount of information synthesis involved, how do you approach that type of work? And what do you think about doing that work, and what strategies you think are most effective to being prepared and being able to make decisions?
Making rational decisions is having all your information before you come to a conclusion, not read one article and not another article. If there's 4 articles, you got to read them all. You can't just read one, because there's 3 sides to every story: his, hers, and the truth.
Do you feel as a town board member that you would be able to advocate or say when you didn't feel like you had enough information in order to make a decision?
Yes.
Have you read our comprehensive plan?
I have not. No,
So do you know anything about it?
I do not know.
Do you have any philosophical thoughts or ideals when it comes to town planning or town development or the shape of the town?
I do not know.
Okay.
No. It'd be all new. I was involved, I'd come to meetings occasionally, never on a regular basis.
Are you familiar with our appointed boards and commissions? Like the Historic Preservation Commission, Planning Board?
No, I'm not.
Okay,
I know they're out there, but not familiar with them, no.
you're probably familiar with the Ambulance Improvement Advisory Committee, though.
Well, right,
That
yeah,
one?
that,
Okay.
right,
That's probably the one that's most aligned with your.
right, I think I can make rash decisions in that aspect. I don't want to be involved with that.
Yeah, I see. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess just in terms of the current board and our priorities and what we've done, are there any decisions that have been made by the board or like last year's board that you are particularly supportive of?
I believe that you've made all rash decisions, and I do like, I got insight that you didn't release money until you had numbers. I know that because I was in that position,
Mhm.
and I believe that was a great decision because right now, excuse me, but right now I think they're running rampant,
Mhm.
and
You're talking about ambulance services.
and that's why I had to step away and.
Mhm.
I feel that you made a great decision there.
So yeah, so you're saying last year when we sort of said we wouldn't release any
Right.
payments until we had met the contract, you really supported that?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, very much so.
Have there been any decisions that you have disagreed with? And that can be, the last few years even.
No.
Okay, and then the last one that I'd like to ask, and then I'll turn it over to the board, is what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of serving on the town board for you?
I think just getting all the information, reading and getting it all together and making my own decision. You know, on situations, I guess.
Okay.
But, just have to take the time and read what I have and make a rash decision.
Yeah, like currently, we're very like digitally focused.
Right.
There's a lot of. There's a lot of information that comes through email
Yeah,
or
yeah.
setting up, like, for example. All of our policies, and there's just like that type of, a lot of that. Do you feel comfortable using those types of
Yes,
systems
yeah.
for, okay. So it's been about 15 minutes, so I'd like to just go ahead and turn it over to the board to ask follow-up questions or anything else that you'd like to ask of David. I might also chime in, but I'm also going to keep an eye on the time and
Okay.
jot down some notes.
Thank you for your service. I think our community doesn't function without the dedication and hard work of our volunteers. So thank you for that. What's interesting about your background is you have so much hands-on contact with the community. Can you tell me a little bit about what you think about the challenges to Rochester, housing, food insecurity, seniors being really isolated out in the back roads? Can you tell me a little bit about your feelings about that and how the town board could address some of those challenges?
I think the town is doing what they can do, is like, getting to, like Trails End, that's a desolate area, and the town is getting up there and opening roads up, and, many years ago, back in Wayne Kelder's days, I was personally on the call, and we called plow truck, and we keep up. You know, it doesn't get any better than that. The supervisor could have called one of his guys, and, delayed it a little bit longer, but he came out. So that's one aspect on helping, older seniors to get in and out, this winter's been challenging with all the ice. Everybody running out of salt. It is what it is, but do your best, and, like I said earlier, being good neighbors, knowing your neighbors, checking on your neighbors. My neighbor is a retired CO, and both my neighbors watch my house. Like, somebody's not supposed to be there, they like, do the right thing and call the respected people. So that what I have on that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, David.
Hello.
Thank you for throwing your hat in the ring and signing up and for being here today. So I have two questions. I'll ask one now, wait for a second round. So I normally ask everyone where they grew up. You touched base on that, if they grew up in town or not. So I want to know what it was like where you grew up, because I'm sure the Rochester you grew up in was much different than the Rochester I grew up.
Like, we went, rode bikes, played in the woods. We as a young man, we used to ride from, I don't know where Evergreen Apartments is. From Evergreen Apartments, we'd ride through the woods to Bell's, ride ATVs. That was a lot of my childhood, ride bikes, ride ATVs, and, it was a quaint little town, we had the flood, I don't know how many years ago it was, the big flood. Everybody came out and helped, and, pumped one of those cellars. I know Ronnie Berenger and Tony Jarvis went fishing for snowmobiles in the rod out, because they were in crates. Everybody helped one another.
That's so different. I did most of the same things.
They I don't know if you, when that flood happened, the Babe Ruth field on Firm Road, that flooded that floated downstream against the bridge. You know, they had I don't know how they finally got it out, but the truck, you know, with the big truck body. And they had to dig it down the stream.
Yeah.
But,
I remember the pumpkins, the picture of all the pumpkins in Rosendale floating down.
Uh-huh.
That they got from here to Rosendale during that flood and the rundown.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Well, Dave, thanks for being here. Appreciate your interest, appreciate all the service through KFAS and your work in the town over the years. I was gonna ask something similar, you know, you've been here your entire life, you know, what is it that you value about town? You know, what's changed in the time you've lived here? And you can say more about that if you want, but it sounds like the community and people helping one another is really important. So appreciate that. You also, when you were answering some of the questions, mentioned the need to balance that we're representing the needs of the community and everyone that lives in town. And I'm curious how you view your role in terms of balancing the needs of the community versus your own personal beliefs, and if those are at odds, how do you kind of approach those decisions?
I don't know. You know, that's. If I were to get on board, I have to put my personal feelings aside. I have to make what's right for my town, not, you know, not necessarily me, you know.
Mhm.
It's about my town, you know.
How would you go about figuring out how to respond to those things when you have people of different opinions in towns? How do you think through those decisions?
Talk to people, you know, get input, you know, feelings and.
Yeah.
You know, one thing, get back to the first date, what my personal feeling is. When somebody calls 911, somebody should show up, you know, it shouldn't go 3 or 4 or 5. You know, cause, a sexy call is, you know, car accident and, you know, but nobody shows up at 1 o'clock in the morning when it's a little lady and she can't get up, you know, and it's usually a driver and EMT and my feeling is when somebody calls, there should be somebody there to respond and come, if nothing else, pick them up and put them back in their chair or bed.
I had another question related to KFAS. So, you know, you served as president of the board. What did that experience teach you about functioning as part of a decision-making body like this? Is there anything that experience gave you that you think would help working with the board like this?
Yeah. I don't know right at this moment. There was a lot of chaos.
Mhm.
And you know, everybody's always fighting one another and so that's, you know, one of the reasons I had to leave and.
Okay.
Again. It shouldn't have been fighting, you should have been working together rather than fighting with one another.
Mhm. So would you say your role in that was to try and encourage people to work together? And
Yeah, right, be a mediator.
that's what I was wondering.
I realize that you've already left, but do you have any creative suggestions to attract more volunteers?
I can't give you my opinion,
Okay.
you know, it's right now, I believe. I can't say, just because I could say, but I can't, no,
Okay.
not on public. You know, I would talk to you more privately about it. But not.
Well, just in general, because we do work with a number of committees, so maybe I could open up more generally. What ideas would you have about encouraging community involvement with town committees and activities?
Town committees, I I make it more public, get the word out more, so. People could, come out, Heritage Day, that's a great thing. Cause it shows their community. Like Croxton, everybody sees Croxton as Main Street 209. Croxton down by the firehouse, Main Street, cause that's where it was when I was a kid. That was a whole line of stores. That is coming back. So I think that's a great thing. But just publicize it more possibly, events. I don't know, maybe have a huge bonfire and involve the community, and like, I'm sure Kelders would host something like that. Cause I'm sure Kelders are still a big part of the community. They just fenced all that area in. I don't know what Chris Kelders' son's name is, but I went to high school with Chris. But, when Carl was here, we had that huge bonfire
Yeah.
across the end of Boyce Mill. I think, community, get people to get together, and
Showing appreciation for the volunteers.
yes, well, appreciation for everybody.
Yeah. So one thing that Michael was asking about was, engaging with the community, hearing different opinions. You said something that you would want to put your personal beliefs aside.
Right.
I would challenge that to say that, one of the things that I think makes a board strong is when we do have members that have strong personal convictions.
Right.
And coming to the table with a diversity of backgrounds. I wonder if you could maybe speak to that a little bit. Also, if you think that there's a sort of voice that you would represent on the board.
I learned this from this member of the first aid squad that I don't know if this is answering your question or not, about looking at the glass half empty or half full. Don't look at both sides. And I know who told me that, and it's another one of those things that it'll stick in my head the rest of my life. And you can't just look at one side, you gotta look at both sides. And you can't, sometimes you can't go with the majority, you gotta have your own personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just because you four agree, it's this way.
Yeah.
I can, my opinion, it may stink, but it's my opinion. I apologize for that.
No, I think that's what I'm getting at, and I wonder if you are aware, like, I could just say, I'm not from Rochester, I'm from Oklahoma.
Right.
And Charlotte is from here. Michael comes from somewhere else, but but has like a really, is also like very open-minded. Alexis is in the farming community, and also really cares deeply about environment. I'm just wondering if is there a way that you would characterize the voice or what you're representing on the board?
I don't know.
Okay.
The people, the town, hopefully the right decision. And back to farming, it's if you want to save a penny, a farmer's a person that can stretch a penny.
That's true.
6
ways.
Working on, it was many years ago, but make it work.
My second question that I had. Is gonna we're gonna take a timestamp back to when me and Michael were campaigning, and we stopped at your house and we had a really nice conversation about 4 years ago. And we talked about code enforcement at the time, and you had some complaints about, just the process of violations in our code enforcement office. Do you think now, later, since, I guess since like since 2020, have we improved those a lot of anything that you were complaining, those issues that you had with our code enforcement office?
I don't remember that time,
Mhm.
but I think so, yes. I think they've improved, yes, I don't remember.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact thing that you brought, topic you brought up, but I remember us talking about our code enforcement office and not clear communications when things were going on.
Right, I don't remember what was going on back then.
Yeah,
Could have been anything.
yeah.
I don't remember back then, sorry.
No, that's totally fine. I was just, because you're one person that I know I specifically talked to about code. I was just wondering if you had felt that any improvements had been made in the last
I
few
don't
years.
recall.
Mhm.
I believe our community's cleaning up and getting better. And that's,
Okay, thank you.
We have a few more minutes, I think.
Do you have questions for us?
Yeah.
it. This is all brand new to me. I've never been in politics. I've come to ask for money for the first aid squad, but that's about it. So this is all new to me, but like I said, I would like to be a voice in my town. For the employees of this town. And I want to make the best decision for our people.
I have another question I can ask, which is, so one of the biggest things we do as the town board is we set the tax levy.
Right,
And this past year, we raised taxes. It came out to be 6%, but it was a 9% overall increase of the amount of taxes, but the way it got applied to households was about 6%.
right.
That covers all the town departments, it's things like, for example, we put road salt and sand out for the
Yeah.
public
Yes,
for
yeah.
emergency situations, and that's carried by the taxpayers.
Mhm.
Our transfer station doesn't cover the cost to operate the transfer station, so the difference of that is covered by tax dollars. We offer Heritage Day, which gets donations and things, but there's a broad way that our tax dollars can support in the community. What do you think about property taxes, and what types, are there any limitations you think on how we should be increasing them, and what should be offered through taxes?
Well, everybody complains about increases, but this year with all this ice, if it wasn't for tax money, nobody would be leaving the property. Because we have a dramatic amount of ice this year, and you can't walk on it, hardly drive on it. So if it wasn't for the increase in taxes, people wouldn't be coming to get sand, myself included. Ice you don't move. Once it's there, it's there. Thank God we've got a couple of warm days. It's starting to reside. But if it wasn't for the taxes, we wouldn't be, you gotta plow, because God forbid, you have a fire someplace. The fire company gotta get there. Or somebody falls down, the first aid squad gotta get there, so. If it wasn't for taxes, we wouldn't have sand and salt, so. That's one small piece of it.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that.
Thanks for that plug for our highway department.
Yeah,
They're doing a great job.
Yes.
Keeping the roads.
We actually have a budget modification on Thursday's agenda, because we need more in our salt budget, but
Well, we get salt from DOT for the prison,
yeah.
and they said, you guys gotta slow down, cause we're running out.
Yeah, we've had so many mild winters that I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
Right, this is winter back when I was a child.
yeah,
When we had lots of snow and.
Yeah.
Right,
but one of the things we've been talking a lot about is this building was recently renovated, but none of our other buildings have been,
Mm.
and I think it's important for the operation of our town departments that we build new infrastructure. Do you support those types of larger capital projects that are
Oh.
funded
um,
partially by tax dollars?
well, if you put your equipment inside, it lasts longer, you know, if it's maintained well, that's, you know. It prolongs the life of your equipment if, you know, put away and put inside and maintained. Rather than just left outside. Mother Nature's rough on things.
Same goes for our staff. They deserve break rooms and
Yeah.
things
Well,
like that.
you know, you don't put gas in the tank, you ain't gonna, you know, like eating or, you know.
Yeah.
You know, you're not gonna function if you don't eat.
We have a couple more minutes. Does anyone have any closing?
Thanks for coming and like I said, throwing your name in the hat.
Well, thank you for having me and I sorry about repeating myself, but
No,
you know, I wanna try to make your community better and, you know, one of the things that, I don't know if the town does it, you know, can we write grants? Cause I know, Mike Waffner, he was one of the guys that was involved with the Pine Grove, Pine Ridge. I remember Pine Grove, that's what it was when I was a kid, sorry. But he wrote a grant and with that generator, that first aid squad, they came all on grants. So, you know, maybe grants on improving our roads. You know, more sand and salt. You know, I don't know how to do that, but you know, I'm willing to learn. So,
well, thank you, David.
Thank you so
very
much. Nice to meet you.
thank you.
Like I said, we have interviews today, and then I think we'll have one more this week.
Okay.
We'll be coming up with when we'll be making the appointment, and we'll keep everybody informed.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't have to stay.
You do not have to stay. You're welcome to stay,
Okay.
but you do not have to.
Thank you.
All right. Nate, you wanna go and come to the.
What's that?
Hi, Alexis. I haven't officially.
Hi, nice to meet you.
This is my.
Hi, Michael. Good, how are you? I still have my voice. It looks really bad, but I still have it.
I got rid of mine.
Yeah. I cut it back, but it doesn't look too happy. She's still thriving.
Are they really toxic to cats or?
Yeah, they're toxic to cats, yeah,
But not dogs, right?
not dogs. I did the research and I got it inside.
Plus it said you guys don't.
Yeah. Yeah, 'cause they definitely shed leaves also, so.
We didn't even know you could winter them over. Are they
Well,
temperamental?
Yeah, you should put them in the dark, like in a dark
dark.
room for 2 weeks, I think it is, and no light, and they'll, the color will come back, because I had one that was just green. This one I cut back, I don't think it's gonna make it. I had one for 2 years. And then it just died.
Ceremoniously. I almost killed an elephant that I had in 20 years.
Ooh.
It's coming back now, I think. They're pretty resilient.
Yeah, they are. That's my type of plant, benign neglect.
It's like we have a snake plant that's like in the corner with no name. It's just.
Love it.
It's great.
well, one of my jokes is like, I can keep 1,000,000 like vegetable plants alive, but my house is where houseplants go
Yeah,
die.
yeah, yeah. That's what when people will come in and say, what's your favorite flower? It's like, I'm biased because I like begonias because they could be like dead and you can't tell.
Great. Thanks for joining us today, Renee. I'm gonna go through the same spiel with every interview. So we had one candidate withdraw, so we're interviewing 3 candidates today. You're the second. And then we have one more that I believe is gonna be scheduled for our meeting Thursday. So just so you know.
Okay.
The board had come up with a list of questions at our last meeting. That's what I circulated. What we're gonna do today is for the first 15 minutes, I'm going to just do a focused hitting the same questions for each candidate, so there's some consistency, and then after 15 minutes, once we've concluded with that, I'm just gonna open it up to the board, and so that will be based on your answers, your history, what particular board members want to hear, and I'll be keeping an eye on the time. So I'm just gonna set my timer. And but first, we wanted to hear from you, just to introduce yourself. Oh, my other spiel. We are streaming. This is a public meeting. We want this to be an open and candid discussion, but keep in mind that anything that pertains to like personnel, like, you know, we want to make sure that we're not disclosing anything in a public forum that we wouldn't otherwise be, just because we'll be talking about town departments and operations, things like that. So I'd just like to start by giving you a little bit of time to introduce yourself, give a brief background, and say a few words about why you'd like to be on the town board in 2025.
Well, my name is Renee. It's nice to meet you guys. I'm born and raised here, as you know. My family has Saundersgill Farms. Do you want me to like really go? I kind of know you guys pretty well.
Yeah, but yeah, I think however you want to frame, you know, for now, and you, I mean, we all know you were on the board with us last year, and feel free to address that.
I am very interested in continuing my opportunity to be on the board because I got so much out of serving those short 6 months. It was a really great learning process for me to understand like all of the inner workings and like a lot of points Joe made. I know you guys work really hard to do, and I think it's not always communicated to the community. I think my perspective would be great to have in this group, and I know that we all work together. I look forward to having the opportunity to work with you. I think we all kind of balance each other out pretty well. And again, my family has really deep roots, and I just feel like it's my obligation to get more involved and have a voice, because if you're going to complain, then you should show up to the table and take a seat. So not that my family's complaining or I'm complaining, I'm just saying I want to volunteer more and be a part of things and make a difference and keep backward. Much like the comprehensive plan, I would like to see it grow and develop, but like there's a balance of keeping it the way it is and keeping it neighborly and keeping it a small community. And so I hope by showing up, I can just.
Thank you. So you do have experience being on the board and working with us. So please draw on that experience or any previous knowledge you have, like for these, there's, you know, questions, and I just want to let you know, I feel really comfortable with hearing your honest and candid responses to things, even though we were, you know, working together in that capacity. So what are your thoughts on how a town board should function effectively?
So I really was trying to think of how to answer this and not sound brown nosing because with the time that I started until now, there has been a significant change on how your meetings are run. And I see that you have made really effective changes to be more efficient, like coming down to 2 meetings a month and changing the structure of like the workshops. And I think we should continue moving that way forward and like continue like looking at ourselves and seeing how we can change. I tend to be a ringer, so I listen a lot and then I'll try and wrap it up, like bring in every point and wrap it up. I think that's helpful. I might not explain myself and thoughts and decisions as thoroughly as some of you guys do. But I think it's because for a living, I run board meetings, and so I'm always like worried about time and like getting out of there within an hour and a half or something, you know, so, but yeah, I think you've already made great progress and you're headed in the right direction of continuing that.
And what do you think about the structure of the work and in terms of like making decisions and approaching priorities effectively and transparently?
Sometimes I wish that there was a little bit more time to catch up on an issue. Definitely being someone that has come in like the middle of a year and having to catch up. I do know I think your first board meeting of the year, you talked about a time frame of like when you want information from it. I agree with that. But that's what, again, to go back to that's what I do for a living is running board meetings. So that's my day structure, is having that time set aside to prepare myself for the meeting for either next week or this coming week. And so I have that time carved out during the day to do reading and to catch up on things. Yeah.
You're aware of this, and I think this kind of touching on the last question, this role requires a lot of reading and synthesizing of information. I'm trying to organize all of our work into a shared drive right now, and it's thousands of pages. So it's a lot. It's, you know, we had a 210-page contract, you know, along with 6 other contracts that we approved at the beginning of the year. We're reviewing our policy manual. We write policies, we draft local laws. The zoning code was 273 pages long. Given that, there's also that plus receiving input from the public, receiving input from agencies, refining things. You talked a little bit more about having more time, but are there any other strategies that you think are most effective to processing and synthesizing information? And also, I'm curious to hear your specific thoughts on like, how much time do you think the board should be spending on, like, how much time do you think you should get for looking at things?
I don't think you can put a time limit on it, just because you never know what's coming next or how extensive something is going to need your attention. I think stepping into a position like this, you have to be aware and be willing to put forward your time to not only just reading, but if you guys attend all the community events, I think that's great. I think it's really important. So I think volunteering, I should say volunteering, stepping into a position like this, you can't expect to put a time cap on it. You're in it. There's something else I was gonna say, but I forgot. Sorry. Repeat the part of that. You were saying, sorry, I had another point, but I can't remember what it was.
Strategies for synthesizing so much information.
Thank you. I think the narrative in the past of us all talking individually kind of came off more with different leaderships, that people were talking or making plans behind them. But I like that. I like talking to Michael and hearing what his perspective is on a certain issue. I like talking to Charlotte because we all have a very different opinion and perspective that we bring to the table. And it's helpful for me to hear that and absorb it and to think more about how that aligns with myself, and to then be able to come to the table and bring a better perspective on it. If that makes sense. I think communication is a really important strategy amongst all of us.
Have you read the comprehensive plan?
I have, actually.
So what philosophical ideals do you have that align with the plan?
I mean, it aligns directly with everything that I feel, as far as keeping this town the novelty that it is, but also making sure that it's economically not profitable, but that it's self-sustainable, but yet affordable for the residents. I was raised very much of helping thy neighbor, and I think it speaks very highly on that, and I kind of feel like we could follow it a little bit more thoroughly, like everything needs to be updated, especially or everything could use improvement, because it was a while that it's been updated, but I do think it's a really great plan, and I'm glad that you made that a question, because I read it and I was like, oh, this is pretty great. I think we could follow it a little bit more strictly.
Do you think that our town comp plan is lacking anything?
I think what's lacking is us not referring to it more, to be completely honest.
I'm just looking, I've got 6 more minutes. So in terms of our boards and commissions, do you think that we're utilizing we have 10. Do you think that we're utilizing those boards and commissions?
I think we could improve upon that, and I don't have a lot of experience just with the ag committee. But I do know that they have so many questions. And like every time we did meet, it was nobody knew what was going on. So I don't think we utilize in that one committee experience that I have, I don't think that we utilize enough.
So it sounds like you think more communication and like almost leadership to guide the committee to and giving them tangible tasks.
And well, I think it's really important for us to recognize that those committees are meeting without us and that they are volunteering and making the effort. And I think we should capitalize on that and utilize that a bit more.
Okay. I think you already answered the question about, we kind of have a question that's like, what perspective or representation do you think that you're bringing to the town board? Was there, in terms of the diversity of who we are
Right.
and the voice, is there anything else you'd like to say on that?
I can reference this in my letter of interest is that, you know, I once again, I was raised to take action based off of my surroundings and the people around me. And I think I'm a listener, and I've really enjoyed when people from the community do call and give their perspective on different issues. And I like to not form an opinion, but I just like to try and have a perspective that brings everyone together, if that makes sense. But okay.
And then in terms of decisions that we've made, are there any that we've made recently that you particularly support?
Support? I mean, the changes in the budget process was really a really great experience for me. I think the amount of support you've shown the staff and showing their value, and also the interest in updating this area and the playground. I just think that it just shows that you're valuing the people that work for the town.
And then any recent decisions, or it doesn't have to be recent, but that you disagreed with, and if so, why?
I wasn't in favor of approving the grant for the granary project, just because I feel like that was it didn't align with our comprehensive plan as far as like the water tables and the concern of how that would affect the town. And also, we really didn't take into consideration with the project of having a tricentennial farm trying to do their day-to-day work and getting equipment through Main Street and stuff like that. I think that was overlooked for the project in general. And I do just also want to point out that the town of Rochester has 2 tricentennial farms, that's really big. And like, so not but Saunderskill is the oldest business in New York State, and that's a lot of history. And I think we should consider agriculture a little bit more.
And so can you talk a little bit more about what conflict you see there between?
Just the traffic on Main Street, and if we put in a 3-way stop at the post office, and I just think that to try and get a combine or even the large trucks that carry the soybeans and corn is going to be very difficult getting through Main Street in the future.
And you see supporting a grant application for, that would have gone towards revitalizing the buildings as something that would support the.
No, I'm
stop sign?
sorry, I didn't support a private person getting a grant for revitalizing the
I see,
buildings.
okay,
Yeah.
got it, okay. I think one more question from me is, you can draw on your own experience from this, but what do you anticipate will be the most challenging aspect of serving on the board?
Trying not to be a people pleaser and leading with my own decisions and being afraid to rough in the waters, is if that's the same.
Okay,
I don't
Others.
waters, I think we can, I think there's like, yeah,
stir the pot.
stir the pot,
Yeah.
make waves.
Yeah, I think that's what.
Yeah. So with that, I'll open it up for more questions from the board. We can stick to the same order that we had before.
Your LinkedIn profile indicates a strong interest in diversity inclusion. What does that mean to you? And do you feel like the board has done enough to include that in their policy?
Yeah, I think the board has, they've been very transparent as far as like, including the community and trying to, have all these, listening sessions and being very open. They've made themselves very available to hear different perspectives and then try and take those into consideration.
Is there more we could do to represent or support underrepresented groups and reach out to them? And who would you say those groups are?
I think there's always room for improvement, as I said before. And that's where like with the housing community, I've learned a lot from Charlotte, and I do, I have like my ag goggles on, and that's why I've really liked this position, is it opens my eyes to other areas of the town that I wasn't very much aware of, and I think that's an area that I could be a little bit more educated on, as to who those groups are.
Okay. And as somebody who also owns, the old Anderson farm, and obviously the continuity and the culture is important to me in the ag community. But do you think long-term residents should have more influence over policy than new residents?
No, I don't think so. I think it should reflect on the town itself, and like I said, the novelty of it. I mean, just because I've been here my whole life doesn't mean that my perspective weighs more. It's just that I know what it was, and I think with the planning board applications, this was my favorite question, as you all know, is what made you fall in love with the town, and then where do you see it in 10 years? Because those are two very different things.
And so that is a good question. Because I'm right next door to Saunderskill Farm. Obviously, I have an interest in what the development philosophy should be for that little area. What do you think should be the direction that we go in?
I
area?
like seeing all these small businesses open. I think that's fantastic, and I think it'll bring a lot to our community. I just hope that the businesses that do open have a sense of community and are respectful to, I mean, I think Main Street is a really good example as to how the residents seem to butt heads with the businesses. And I would like to see moving forward that the camaraderie is better between the businesses and the residents.
So how do you think we could facilitate that as a board?
It's a good question. I mean, you'd think it would just kind of be common sense of growing up in a community, but to facilitate that, I think, again, open lines of communication and maybe one of us taking it upon ourselves to having a conversation with both parties and seeing how they would like to come to the table and figure out a better understanding of one another.
But you generally support developing downtown Concord?
Not developing, but improving.
What's the difference?
I don't want to have like, like I don't know, I would like it to maintain but not get extreme.
Maintain. So what would you like to see down there if not the greenery?
I I don't really have a vision of what I see because I like things the way that they are.
Okay, and it was really interesting because that theme came up, during my campaign and keeping things the way they are, that's, I think we all have this nostalgia, but that actually requires an incredible amount of work to preserve that. So can you speak a little bit about that, how the town can, accomplish that?
I probably can't because I don't have the experience of it. I just like the area.
I'm gonna ask you, I mean, obviously you touched base that you're born and raised in the area, but I want like you to tell me where you grew up was like.
It was heaven. I'm very, very lucky to have lived, my cousins were my neighbors. We rode our bikes every day. We were on the farm every day. It's not a lifestyle that many can have. Still to this day, I can walk out my door with my dogs off leash and go for a very long walk and not have to be disturbed with that. I do see that that's a privilege. And I do very much love where I grew up.
You can go, Michael. I had another question, but totally screwed now.
Hi, Renee.
Hi.
So you had the opportunity to sit on the board for 6 months. Thinking back on that time, is there a decision you made that in retrospect you've come to think about differently? And can you say more about why? And I think you kind of already touched on this, but an alternative to that would be something that you feel more confident in your decision about. And you can explain why.
I think, as far as the zoning process, that was very scary for me, so I didn't try and like dive into it to understand. Like, I know you guys went through such a lengthy process to develop it. I kind of wish I had read a little bit more during the process and then maybe have, not that I think anything should have done differently, I just think I should have understood more, if that makes sense. Because it was talked about a lot and I feel like I very much was kind of like, I wasn't a part of that, which in retrospect, I kind of wish I had just had a better understanding to then be able to talk about it. And then I think the other was my decision about the community preservation plan. I know a lot of work went into it and I respect that very much, but I just did feel very strongly that there needed to be more language for farmland.
Okay. And what would your first priority be if you were to serve on the board again? Is there work that you feel like you started and were really interested in that you would want to pick up and work on right away?
I would definitely like to attend more things, so there wasn't anything that I started and didn't finish, but I would like to spend more time with the staff too. I liked that we included the department heads in the budget planning, and I was thinking that we could, invite them occasionally to board meetings to just give us an update of what's going on and what they need and what you already have planned. But just building those relationships and engaging with the community a bit more.
Okay.
So your experience on Ag Committee and the town board, what achievements are you most proud of?
I can't say for me because they did all the work, you know what I mean? I just was the line of communication for them. I think it's great that they did the right to farm signs. I think it's great that they've
Still to get those up.
Yeah. I think it's great that they've taken the initiative to meet regularly and want to communicate with people in the community as well. I can't say I'm proud of them. I'm not proud of anything they've done. You know what I'm saying?
Anything that you're not.
I didn't, I was just taking the line.
Okay, so you see that relationship more as a conduit between the town board and you're not actively working on policy agendas with them?
Yeah, I mean, I've attended their meetings and we went through the community preservation plan. We've looked at, I offered them other county community preservation plans or towns and I've worked with them on that. Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
No. So my last one, I remember. Right, that's a good point. when you first joined the board for your 6 month stint last year, I really appreciated the fact that you reached out to me separately first. With, I don't remember if it was the CPP or something else, but you called me to learn my perspective and why I didn't agree with what we were editing. And you took in that information instead of we had like disagreed about something. And that's what prompted the call. And that instead of us disagreeing and just leaving it till the next board meeting that you contacted, I really appreciated and respected that style of communication when there was a conflict. Do you think, can you just speak to any other ways that you worked through? If there's something that you are not seeing eye to eye on with another member?
Yeah, and I think I said this to you, is that if I say something that upsets you or you really don't agree with, it's typically with me, like I said, with the ag blinders, I don't have a better understanding of it. So I want us to know or to feel comfortable with, if you're like, hey, you know, you spoke on that and I don't agree with you. I want to know why, because it's not that you could change my mind pretty easily, but for me, it's a lack of knowing. And I think I like to absorb what other people's perspectives are and then come to a decision. So,
Yeah. Did you have one question?
I mean, I think one thing that I'm thinking a lot about is it's not an easy task or topic. Looking at our planning board, for example, they have 20 open applications from everything ranging from 8-lot subdivisions to you know, big changes in site plans for existing parcels. We're working to resource the planning and zoning, you know, board and department. I have my own thoughts about it. When I look at neighboring towns, there's 1 or 2 items on agendas, and those projects go through in 3 months, 3 to 4 months, where we definitely have had a lot of changes, both with officials and staff, and code changes that have impacted the last year of projects. But it does feel like a lot, and it feels like there's a lot of work involved in administering our code. And I'm curious, I'm curious if you have any ideas about like what is going on there, if it's just attraction to our town, or if there's some other way that we could try to make whatever is in terms of like the development and the review process and how it's happening better and more efficient.
I mean, just off, I'm not gonna do another saying now, off the cusp, what is it? Just being put on the spot with that, and I know getting volunteers is an issue, but perhaps maybe we can break down the planning and zoning boards into subcategories of certain projects and what, you know, they require, entail, and then have people that can focus in and have a little bit better perspective on like a larger development versus a small operation or small project. And then maybe the smaller projects that take a little bit less of the deep dive will go through a little bit quicker. It's just, you know, on the spot idea.
One of the things that I've been reflecting on is I don't feel like our code has done a really good job of really directing development. And I think Alexis was asking a little bit about the hamlet of Accord, but where do you think, if we do want to see more concentrated development in town, where do you think that should be, and what do you think we should be directing to it, and why?
I think small businesses, you know, if you want to kind of resemble Rosendale maybe, or even High Falls, like keeping it quaint, nothing too extreme. And it doesn't have to be right on Main Street. It could go off of Main Street. It's just an idea. Because there's a lot of houses too, though, and you don't want to take that away
Right.
as well. But I mean, there's the museum and then there's the parking lot. Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to see it stay quaint.
You have any questions for us?
I do.
I mean, I could ask questions like for 10 hours.
I do have a question, a clarifying question, kind of on what something Alexis asked, which I think is I think it's the hard thing to try to explain and define to people who haven't lived here their whole lives when we say that, we want things to stay the same.
Mhm.
And I know me personally, it means it's more of a philosophical want things to stay the same, as in the sense the community here.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that the buildings have to stay the same or the businesses, so I'm just wondering if you have a similar mentality on that, or if you mean like the actual enterprise, or you just mean like the sense of neighborly and community as a whole
Exactly.
that we want to stay the
That
same.
is exactly it. And I don't know how to explain it, but it's, and I hate to say this for the third time, but it's how I was raised is to, you know, be very kind with your neighbors. I'm very lucky. Yeah, I do live in our compound, but I'm a little bit further than like say my sister and my dad, and I'm very lucky to have amazing neighbors that show up if they see that you need help, or it's just a sense of camaraderie without, like David Lawrence came and standed at the driveway without me having to ask him because it was, you know, because the ice is so bad. It's just those random acts of kindness that I would just, it needs to remain the same.
What do you think threatens that?
No offense, but I do think it is people moving into the area that aren't used to that mentality or that environment, and don't necessarily always hold the door open for somebody, or don't wave at a car that drives by, or doesn't just say hello. And that's not every single person that's moved into the area. It's just an observation.
So you think that more people coming here, like increasing population or that would somehow, or do you think there's some way that in this role as a town board, we could bridge?
And you talked about it earlier. I was thinking of my answer to your question for David. Definitely what Jerry suggested, getting back the volunteer barbecues, more of stuff like Heritage Day. It doesn't have to be to the extreme. Somehow getting people more to like the pancake breakfasts, just having more social time, more networking. That's when you're gonna learn each other's names. It's when you're gonna have conversations, and then that's where that builds off of. Because we don't live in a structure right now where you're necessarily gonna talk to your neighbor unless you have to. And again, I was lucky to grow up here and to know who they are.
This is actually a question I had for another candidate, but since we're talking about it. So what do you think we can do to foster and develop third spaces? And have you identified them here? And what can we do to grow them?
What is a third space?
It's like a place that's not work or home, where community is built and fostered. And right now, I feel like a lot of the third spaces we have are like private commercial entities, but is there something we could do, like more parkland or something like that? Like, what's our role in that?
I mean, I think developing the community, the CPP, that will do that. For starters, and you're already rebuilding the park, the town park, which is, I think, fantastic. I think that was overlooked for many years for the camp that was there every summer, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
Well, if there's nothing else, thank you, Renee.
Thank you guys
It
very
was good
much.
to see you
Good to see
again.
you guys.
Thanks for coming
It was
on.
nice to
Thank
see you
you. It's ready to go.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Get early.
Yeah, I'd like to, we'll maybe take a 5-minute bathroom break. Yeah,
Stretch.
we're still gonna be streaming though, so.
Charlotte, we can come back. Solid.
Hi.
Hey, Dolly.
How are you?
Are we still streaming?
Yeah, it'll still stream.
It'll still stream.
Great, yeah.
Well, you want to do like a tap dance or something, like the performance portion of the interview is here? I know it's 80s. Actually, it's pretty impressive to the entire like Disney compendium. here.
On video.
Yeah, on video. So it's a good thing to collect them. I know they're all.
I found an old AOL disc,
Yeah,
starting the startup disc,
no, that's probably like a,
the collector's item.
yeah. Exactly. Actually, I was just talking about how people use DVDs to like hang up and drive off raptors and I was, yeah, I don't know, I only lost one chicken to raptors. I know, that's why I love raptors because like they take out the groundhogs.
Yeah.
And those are what I really try to get rid of.
Like 2 owls, one living in my front yard, and one living in my back.
Oh, yeah.
Probably related.
You were looking, didn't look far enough.
Is anybody in the bathroom right now?
It's okay.
It's okay.
Latest format, you're doing a good job.
I left on the plate with you, I don't know if you saw it.
I did, I saw them online.
Oh, okay.
Same
great.
ones?
Yeah, I put them on the, in the
Yeah,
agenda.
that's good.
Peter Nelson's on this board.
Is that the Mary Lee?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that this year. Very exciting.
Did you let the kids drive one of your fire trucks?
No, it was a complete surprise, but it was very nice. I have done a lot of stuff.
Actually do need water, but I don't. I don't have a cup. Okay.
I have a couple, I don't know how to use it.
Oh, I've been there.
Either spills everything down your
Yeah.
shirt or it's stuck and you can't open it.
Yeah.
Is your yard covered with ice or are things thawed enough
No.
to be able to see dirt?
It's totally still an ice sheet, but I think by the end of the week, we'll have mud.
Oh, yeah.
Cause it's gonna be like 48.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be above freezing for a couple days.
Before it freezes again?
Yeah.
Like to melt everything.
Like, we haven't had it,
I got through my eyes.
we haven't had it 24 hours where, it, you know, Yeah.
Michael,
So nice to meet you.
I'll throw your hat and ring on it. Yeah. What's up? Oh, that's Alana. Alana Bloom.
okay, so we're back. So we're gonna start the interview. Hi, Sally. Thanks
Hi,
for joining us.
how are you?
Good. I'm just gonna set my timer and then go through my little spiel, which I think you might have heard, but
you can skip the spiel. I can hear it.
great. Okay. Yeah, but just mostly, we just don't wanna just share any nothing personal about personnel or anything like that, since we're streaming and this meeting will stay online. I will do the first 15 minutes of questions and then we'll open it up.
Okay.
We will go from there. Thanks for adjusting your schedule also. So could you just start by sharing a bit about yourself, your background, and why you think you should be on the town board?
Okay, so I've owned a home here for 25 years or so, and originally started out as a weekender, got involved in sort of community events and things almost immediately. Sort of what got me really involved on the government side of affairs of things was I lived across the street from what used to be a rock quarry, and there were some other quarries that were in residential neighborhoods that were operating, and I wanted to make sure that I had an understanding of what could be done there. So that was sort of a catalyst for learning about what's going on in town, and I learned that the comprehensive plan and zoning laws hadn't been updated since 1969, and this was 1999, I think. And talked to a lot of people around town, and we started the Rochester Residents Association, which was intended to be sort of an organization, an umbrella organization to provide a forum for people to discuss issues of community concern. Fast forward to 2001 and 9/11 and the huge influx of people who came, and we realized that the town was sort of at a critical juncture where if the town did not address these issues, we would let external forces force their will upon us as residents. And so we put together a sort of a workforce to update the plan and update some of the laws. But through that, I was a weekender for a while. I was part-time, full-time, part-time up here. But I've always considered Accord to be my home. It's where I entertain my families. When they come to visit, they don't visit me anywhere else. They come here. When I see friends, they come visit me here. And most of the events of my life are centered around here. So I have a deep love for the community, the area. And combined with sort of my experience with nonprofit organizations and as well as my professional experience, I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to sort of marry all of those things together at a time that, since I'm now retired or semi-retired, I have the time to do it, whereas I haven't had the time to do it before. So I think this is a good time in my life to be able to make the contributions that I think that I can make, and hopefully those will be of benefit to the town.
I'm going to go slightly off script and just ask if you see any parallels between 2001 and now. I
think 2001 was sort of the tail end of probably a 15-year real estate depression, where property values were pretty much stagnant and still very affordable, even though as the affordability issue has always been a problem, especially, I mean, it was identified in the 2006 comprehensive plan, and now it's just 2.5 times worse. But I think that the difference now is with telecommuting and an improvised or an improved internet infrastructure, which we did not have in 2001, makes it easier for people with a lot more money to come here. So that exacerbates the separation between people who don't worry about the fact that a dozen eggs cost $12 and those who it really makes an impact on their weekly food budget.
Yeah. Thank you.
But that's a huge,
yeah.
huge difference. I think there's a lot more affluence here than there for was.
Yeah. So just to the questions that we circulated, what are your thoughts on how the town board should function effectively?
Well, I think, first of all, it's the level of political discourse in town is much calmer than it was 20 years ago. I think that it's encouraging to see, I mean, everyone's responsible adults and everyone, is able to articulate what their concerns are. But I think that the important thing is that there is always a environment of mutual respect where people aren't shooting down ideas because of where those ideas came from. I think that the board has to be open-minded and listen to all points of view and take those into consideration. I think that what we have seen on the national political scale is sort of a pendulum swing from one extreme to the other and back and forth. And I think that in a small community like this, we simply can't have that happen. I mean, I think that we have to be cognizant of creating consensus. And that might frustrate people who don't want to move at all. It might frustrate people who want to move a lot faster. But I think in the long term, it's sort of the what weaves the community together and makes it livable without driving down Main Street and wanting to run over somebody. So it's really I think it's the responsibility of town government to make sure that all those voices are heard and that people who want to express their views are able to do that without fear of repercussions.
I think that sort of addresses the second question, but if you just had any thoughts on any particular structure that we should have in order to both what you're talking about for transparency and community involvement, but also efficiency.
I think that, I mean, I've served on dozens of boards.
Yeah.
I chair a number of them. I think that it is really important that people do their homework and that it's not a town board meeting isn't time to ask questions about what something says and sort of have to refer back to the documents and look for it. I mean, I think that everybody has to really pull their weight ahead of time and also identify those issues ahead of time that they might have questions about, so that whoever is sponsoring the legislation or the motion can identify those points that mitigate whatever that concern is. I mean, some points you're never going to agree on anything, but you have to be able to respond and not kick it forward another month to the next meeting.
Okay. On that note, there is a lot of homework. There's an immense amount of, written documents that we rely on, both to guide us, and also just the work itself. Our policies runs from everything from town code to our own internal policies, and various contracts that we have with our vendors and our service providers. How do you approach that type of work, organizing it, synthesizing it, making sure that you have the time you need? Like, do you have any strategies that you think are most effective?
I've spent my entire career dealing with legal documents that are that thick. So I think that the types of contracts that you work with here are fairly simple. I did work with in 2004 or so on the Time Warner contract renewal. And I think we negotiated kind of a good deal. We got about 10 miles of as I recall, of line in town.
Coming up again.
Yeah. And yeah. But I think that I'm used to legal documents. I've worked with them for 40 years and I'm not afraid of them. It's just you got to find the time to sit down and read them. I think that when you're reading them, it's always important to step back a little bit and say, what are we trying to achieve with this? What are the goals? What's best for the community? What are the potential pitfalls? What are the costs? Both in terms of how much you're paying out for procurement, but also what are the costs in terms of knock-on effects? Who is this going to hurt? Who's it going to help? And overall, we have to keep in mind that what we're trying to do is do what's best for the community. And not just year to year, but long-term, 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. Or more.
You have read the town comprehensive plan.
I did, in fact, yeah, no, we vetted most of the people who were put on the
Yeah.
committee. We created the environment where that could be addressed. We interviewed Peter Fairweather and Tom Shepstone and who was it from Chazen to put it together. So I was intimately involved, not on the committee, but sort of supporting Supervisor Duke at the time in sort of pulling it together and marshaling it through the community and the town board of adoption. So I do know it quite well.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the document we ended up with.
I think it's a fair document. It's a living document, one that has to be updated a lot, not every 20 years or every 10 years. I think that we always have to keep in mind what the community vision is. And I think in terms of its principles, it's pretty simple. It's like allow for growth while keeping the community rural. I mean, that's the easy part. What we do see, and I'm sure is what you've seen being more involved with it more recently, is that everyone's going to use it as a basis for whatever they like or don't like. And that's fine. I mean, it's a starting point for discussion and self-evaluation. But I think that the general principles are, development where it makes sense, where there's access to transportation and road frontage or whatever new forms of infrastructure are required. The protection of water resources and things like wetlands that clean the water supply, and trying to find, density based on how much septic systems can absorb and well water recharge rates. So I think that those elements of it, the technical elements, are fairly straightforward and factual. But the document always has to reflect what the community wants within the constraints of what our geography can support.
Are there any things, well, I think you alluded to this, but you said anyone can kind of justify anything they want in our comprehensive plan. So is that something that you think is lacking or needs to be improved?
No. Because people you can have the same set of circumstances and two vastly different interpretations of what they are. So I don't think that you can do anything to stop that. And I think that what it does is it always is a catalyst for the town to review what the plan says. Is that accurate? Is that really what we want? And I think that there's a great social benefit to conversations like that.
Our plan hasn't been it's only been updated in that we added appendices. So the heritage plan and the open space inventory. And do you have what do you think in terms of the next update? Do you think it should be a redo or just a revision?
I think it can be a revisiting of what it already says, because its underlying principles haven't changed. We want to keep, the open spaces. We want to keep the recreational areas. We need to attract businesses that employ our young people and allow families to stay here and thrive here. And I think that, when you look at it, it might need to be amended at the margins, but I think that the general principles of the plan haven't changed.
Do you think, so moving on to a new topic, we have 10 boards and commissions in town that are appointed by the town board. Some are public bodies and some are advisory boards. Do you think that we are underutilizing our boards?
I don't really know how much they're being used. I know that the three decision-making bodies, which are the ZBA, the planning board, and the BAR, I think of those, the planning board is definitely overtasked.
Yeah.
And I think that, that board, along with the planning and zoning offices need to make sure, we have to make sure that we have, enough support for them. Because it's the type of thing where, I mean, the decisions that come out of those are, ones that can be litigated, and that litigation can cost the town a lot of money, and we have to make sure that the process that we do, when I say we on the town side, comports to the law and doesn't leave exposure to potentially being overturned by a court.
Mhm.
So, I mean, we can't be afraid of litigation, but we can't lay a roadmap for somebody to successfully sue us and overturn whatever decisions our decision-making bodies make.
So sticking to I want to ask a follow-up question, but someone else might get it in the next round. One thing that I wanted to ask about is any decisions that we've made recently that you particularly support.
I think that the updating of the appendices to the comprehensive plan is long overdue. I think that the threat of the real threat of undesirable types of development is very, very real. I think that we have to make sure that the community, through the town board and its various affiliates, whatever, are the ones who are ahead of that discussion rather than being responsive to outside threats. Because if you're changing a law or something in response to an outside threat, you're creating a potential weakness and potentially indefensible position. So I think that anything that the town board can do to be ahead of that is important and needs to be done.
And then conversely, are there decisions we've made recently that you disagree with?
Not ultimately, no, but I think that I was watching the discussion about the granary, and my thought was that it's money that, first of all, what the town is doing is whether to endorse a grant or not. It wasn't approving or not approving the plan itself. Which is generally, I think, under the purview of the planning board, if I'm not mistaken. But I think that when you look at it, take the project itself out of consideration, and look at the fund, the town should be doing absolutely everything it can to get any kind of grant money it can for whoever in our community needs it. Whether those are private individuals, whether they're farms like Tricentennial Farms that have been receiving federal funding for decades, or whether it's somebody who wants to open a project like the granary. I think the town has to be supportive of those endeavors. First of all, the money has already been allocated. It's not coming from us. If it doesn't come to the town of Rochester, it's going to go to another community in Ulster County or another county somewhere else in the state of New York. So if we're not supportive of accepting other people's money coming from other taxpayers outside of our region, even though many of us have contributed to the state income tax that funds a lot of those programs, I don't think that we're doing all that we can to support our businesses. And those businesses, and not talking about granary in general, I mean, in particular, I'm talking about businesses in general. The problem with our community is we've never had any type of manufacturing, large-scale manufacturing like Ellen Bill, although we've had a lot of people who worked at the VAW plant and the Schrade plant who got laid off when those plants left. This has always been a very agriculturally based community. And based on that agriculture, a lot of people, tourists, have come to stay here for the summers over the turn of the last century and more recently through through just coming here to see, farms, and Minnewaska and all the other natural resources. But when we look at the business cycle in town, and I'm going back, whether we're talking about 300 years when the schoonmakers and other farmers came here or not, there are people who came here, they liked it, they wanted to stay. More recently, it's been people who've come here. They come to a wedding at Crested Hen or wherever they like it. They say, oh, this is a nice area. I'd like to, stay here for a weekend or come here for a weekend. Then they, rent a house for the summer or buy a house for the summer. And then when they buy a house, they come up here and they say, I hate going back to wherever I came from every Sunday night. I want to stay here. And they will bring their financial, their intellectual, and their capital and their ideas, and they'll do everything they can to stay here. And that has been the genesis of just about every single business in town that's been created in the last 50 years. So if we shut off that pipeline, the town's going to go stagnant. And we're not, and it's up to the town to make sure that we keep that in mind and look at patterns of growth and think 50 years down the road rather than 2 years down the road.
My last question, and then I'm going to turn it over to the board, is what do you anticipate to be the most challenging part?
Time.
Yeah.
It's always time. Not necessarily the amount of time, but sort of scheduling and when things need to be done. And
Are you available the second and fourth Thursdays of each month?
I know, usually.
That's our meeting. Okay. Alexis, did you have a question?
Yes, a couple days ago, Ulster County Legislative Chair Peter Criswell delivered the annual chair address and focused on a feeling of fear and uncertainty that faces our county and communities. And he touched on the specter of losing federal funds. How can we as a board prepare for the loss of services and support, reassure our constituents, and be, as you were talking about, proactive about challenges coming down the pike?
Those are very, very real challenges because the cost cuts trickle down, and not only does it affect the state and the county and Rochester as a municipality or locality, but it affects the people who live here. And we've seen an upturn in local use of the food pantry next door, and I don't think that's gonna change. I think that some of the policies from Washington are going to affect the cost of things like fire trucks and new road equipment and other things that the town needs to buy. It's going to affect the cost of fertilizer for what our farmers need. So I think that we have to sort of look at ways that we can sort of be more cognizant of the spend rate. And also make sure that on the revenue side that we're getting revenue where we can. I know that the assessor's been very good at bringing on under tax properties that have been off for a long time, as he's done in Marbletown and other towns, and I think that that's going to continue. But I think that we have to be cognizant of affordability, and that extends to what our tax levy is and what's passed down. And I'm sort of thinking about it from an intellectual standpoint. The more property that's brought on, the actual lower percentage of the levy each individual resident would have to pay, except for those people who got caught for their the house that they weren't paying taxes on. So I think that we have to be cognizant of affordability at every stage. We both in terms of the town's budget and expenditures. We have to we just have to brace ourselves for a 2 or 3 year, 4 year readjustment in revenues, which we don't really know the full effect of yet.
So, we've been mulling the real estate transfer tax, and that would be used to promote the acquisition of open space parcels. Is that what you would do with that source of revenue, or what are your opinions on that?
I mean, I think that if there's the open space plan, those revenues obviously need to be spent on open space. I know that there's also consideration of a affordable housing levy, which I think is a great idea, but we have to also remember that creating affordable housing is very expensive. I mean, I was on the board of Habitat for Humanity for 10 years and was treasurer of one of the largest affiliates in the United States, and we had a $40 million federal grant, and what we were or $40 million program we had to put in our, it was a 50% grant, so we had to raise our own money, but for every unit we were spending $500,000 to house a single family, and when under Habitat's model those units are sold, and you can sell them for maybe half of that based on the affordable pricing index. So the contribution from Habitat for Humanity, however that money was raised, was 50% of the cost, which is $250,000 a unit or so. So we have to, there's a need for housing. We have to be smart about how we decide that the town is going to participate in creating that housing. And I think that the terms of the tax, in terms of the levy on sales, is a fair one because it deals with rotation. It's not like a daily or an annual ad valorem tax that is passed on to homeowners. It's one that happens when you buy or sell a home, and it doesn't really have an effect on the day-to-day lives of somebody who isn't buying or selling a home.
Ellie, thanks for being here. So I have a couple of questions. So I'll ask you my first one that I've been asking everyone. Where did you grow up and what was it like?
I grew up in Southern California, and it was not as cold as this ever. But I think that I think that I grew up in a different time. I think that the level of sort of helicopter parenting was nowhere near what it is now. It's like after school, you go out and, you get lost, and when the streetlights come home, you're supposed to be home for dinner. And I think that what that taught was a lot of independence and self-reliance, and the ability to adapt and keep myself entertained and not be reliant on people spoon feeding me entertainment and TikTok and everything else. So, but it was great. We traveled a lot as a kid with my parents, and spent a lot of time in places like Yosemite and national parks, and it was a pretty ideal childhood.
Cool. And was it urban, suburban,
Suburban.
rural, city, suburban?
Yeah.
Great. So my next question, I was taking notes while you had a lot of interesting things that I was trying to keep all of them written down while soliciting. So I'm curious, you said that, more people, more residents, more buildings we have in town, the less the tax pool, the more it gets distributed. So being someone that comes from a conservation background and serves on a land trust, what are your concerns about the impact to our natural resources?
I think that
Development.
conservation and development are not incompatible. I think that what we have to do, and what the town government has the ability to do, is to make sure that conservation, those open spaces, are planned for and retained, and that development occurs where it makes sense in a manner that makes sense. That might be some of the things that have been approved by the planning board lately, which are a lot of conservation type subdivisions where the residential density is concentrated in a small footprint, whereby they're able to preserve larger spaces of open space and of wetlands and ecologically important areas. But I don't think that development and conservation are incompatible at all.
Yeah, I guess I was more looking for you to speak on the effect of development on environmental resources. So example, you brought up the granary project and our decision on the grant. That project itself was criticized during the ECC level and at the planning board level about water constraint issues because there is no municipal water on Main Street and there's very limited water as it is for our residents and our businesses here. So that is what an example.
I mean,
So
this
groundwater
is
an
also-
environmental resource.
Yeah, I mean, this is also something that came up 20 some years ago. There was originally planned to bring a water line over from Banjo Bank. And the creamery has a huge GPM rate, lots of water there. But I think that those are things that need to be addressed in sort of the comprehensive plan, which I think they are.
Do you think that they should be addressed at the planning and the approval level also though? In our like
If
process?
they comport to the comprehensive plan.
And then I'm also wondering, can you give me the definition of affordable housing?
It's, I mean, every community has its own definition. I mean, for me, it's what can the average family in town afford looking at a, say, 33% of budget housing cost. I don't know what the numbers are, but what's I think the Accord AMI is higher than the Honson, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's like 55 to 65,000.
No, the town of Rochester as a whole is at 76,000. It's AMI right now.
Okay.
Which kind of leads me to my next question. Do you know the poverty rate for the town of Rochester?
Imagine it's pretty high.
It's at 12%. And what about the homelessness of our children in our elementary school? Anyone is 50%. You also say that we need to support our businesses and our community during your answer to one of the questions. What do you feel a business's responsibility is to our to support our community when they join it?
I mean, I think of the businesses I've seen, other than extractive industries, I haven't seen any business in town that has not been making a contribution to the community in some way, shape, or form.
So that's what you say, businesses should come in and contribute back, like
Well, of course, I
i.e.
mean, it's good for business. It's,
Or, and then you talked about working with Pam Duke, which I don't think anyone besides me at this table was in the area for, so I was just curious, when you guys were working that initial influx of people in 2001 that came to the area from the city from, after 9/11, and the influx we got when you guys were first talking and working on the comprehensive plan, or even when the RRA was formed, right, our Rochester Residents Association, that's the abbreviation. Did you guys ever identify or like mark the difference between revitalizing areas or gentrifying areas, like the stronghold difference between those two when you guys were going to do the work and identifying things where we
I'm
wanted
not quite sure what.
so revitalization is one thing, gentrification is another. They're almost polar opposites in identifying markers, but they have similar characteristics. So when you guys went forth to make the recommendations and to try to keep the town not overdeveloping at that time in the early 2000s, did you guys ever identify or look at that to try to protect the area from that, from being gentrified opposed to revitalized? When we had that
question.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for your interest in this. In your letter of interest, and I think this kind of builds on the questions other people are asking, you kind of mentioned these major inflection points for some of the discussions we've been having, will have in the next few months. Housing shortage, preservation of open space, preservation of farmland. I also think there's a part of that of farmland in terms of accessibility of farmland, diversity of opportunities for farmers. We do benefit from having large family farms, but newer farmers obviously have a hard time getting land. Land is almost as hard to come by as a house in the area. So I'm just curious, you've thought about this and worked on it a lot over the years. What ideas do you have about navigating those conflicting priorities, and if we have to pick and choose when and how we prioritize those three different poles? I'm curious what ideas you have about how we should start focusing on that.
Those poles being business housing.
Open space, housing, and farming.
Well, I consider open space and farming.
Yeah, so open spaces and preserved, conservation areas, large open space versus.
Active.
Active.
As you know, I've been working with the Rhonda Sopas Land Conservancy since 2007. And almost all of that property, other than forest, is preserved farmland. Like the Davis Farm, which is 300, Arrowhead Farm, which is 350 acres to another 350 acres on West Platte Road, and that's all preserved as farmland. So I definitely consider farmland and open space in many ways synonymous, but you're asking about a different point, which is access to that land. And I don't know whether there's anything that the municipality can do to make that farmland more accessible for new gen farmers who want to come in. I think there's been a huge influx of them over the last 15 years or so. People who've come up here and found farmland. But I think that there's a large element of supply and demand. As long as there is preserved farmland in the area, then it's available. It's just a matter of how that land is distributed, and who has the ability to lease farm. I think that what I've seen is that, from personal experiences, I know a lot of people who have large areas of farmland, they can't find people to farm it. And so I think that there's a way, I know that being in the land trust community, I know I get inquiries periodically from people looking for farmland. And if there were a clearinghouse for people who are looking for land to do that type of thing, as well as people who are looking for people to come farm on their land, that would be a great benefit. But I think that it might be too small in the Rochester community, but something that could be explored more in the Ulster County level or on a regional level. Thank you.
That kind of reminds me of one thing I wanted to talk about, which was grants. We've been having discussions in the committees that I'm liaison with about their success. Gardner has generated, just their environmental committees, over $400,000 in grant activity. So I assume that you're familiar with grant writing and getting revenue sources that way. Can you talk a little bit more about what we could be doing to further that?
I think I'm not familiar with the types of grants that are available to municipalities, right? So I can't really speak with any confidence on that. But I think that what we have to do is, or what should be done is sort of look at what types of funds are available and where they're available, and what types of funds or projects those are available for. And to the extent that that we have projects in the community that fit those parameters, I think we should encourage them, just as, get back to the granary project. The grant money was available, and we had a plan, and if the money didn't come here, it was going to go somewhere else out of the county.
I just want to follow up on that question. So one, there's other applications, just as a clarity, there's other applications for this county for the same funding, so it wouldn't have gone out of the county. It could also go in the county.
Rochester.
But as far as grants go, so you said that we should be applying for any that we meet the stipulations on. My criticism and reason I voted no is that we didn't meet the stipulations of that funder and the grant. So I'm curious how your experience in grant writing through the vetting process and what you would you normally send an application that has,
I don't know. I mean,
there's an active article, there was an active Article 78 on the project, which is my reasoning for not, part of my reasoning for not wanting to pursue the funding, because that does not look good to funders, and in the future, we might potentially go and look for that funder again and have now had an application.
So, but the corollary of that is if I, as an individual, sue anyone who's applying for a grant, that grant should not be applied for.
No, but it's over the determination of the
Well,
project,
but
which
the
might not
project-
happen.
Well, the
Depending
grant
on
hasn't
what-
been funded yet, so there are always conditions precedent to a grant, and those conditions precedent have to be met.
And then so just other questions, one follow-up question, do you have any kids, Sally?
No.
No, okay. My other question, so to clarify my question from earlier, can you define the difference between revitalization and gentrification?
Well, I think they both happen in the same areas. I think revitalization is, having spent, all my time with Habitat for Humanity, creating and revitalizing neighborhoods, especially under this $40 million grant from the federal government, which was a revitalization plan, is taking housing stock that was decrepit and revitalizing it for people of specific demographic characteristics, but not demographics, economic characteristics. I think there's a difference between that and somebody buying a house and flipping it. And I think that that there are a lot of people who reside in houses that they own and that are decrepit, that are unsafe, and that the residents don't have the money to fix up. And I think that the town has a responsibility to try to find grant funding to help in situations like that, even though those monies are not municipal monies, because the town can't necessarily fund a project for someone's personal benefit.
Yeah, and then my last question, and then I'll pass it along to everyone else. Do you think that government is bipartisan? Or that we should be acting in a bipartisan manner?
Of course, yeah. I mean, it goes back to the point that I talked about beforehand, where we cannot afford in a town like this to absorb the pendulum swings of going back and forth. So we have to build a consensus, and whether that's in the name of, somebody's from one party and someone's from another party, or whatever. I mean, I think that we're going to go further in the long run by consensus building than we are by cramming things down people's throats.
Okay, thank you.
So I wanted to follow up. When we were talking about, you seem familiar with the planning board and how much work is before the planning board. And you were talking about resourcing the planning board. One of the things that has come up a lot, I'm sort of touching on two things that we've discussed. One is, you said that businesses that sort of, the types of businesses that have come up in our community have all given back to the community in some way. And I think I agree with that. I think unless it's someone who has zero customers, there's always going to have that. One of the things that we've seen though is, I think we have a very big, large zoning code. It has a lot of words and a lot of uses. And particularly a couple of the uses that were used to springboard businesses in town that over the summer, now especially being in the role that I am, I see this burden that has come forward in the community where it's affecting people's quality of lives, their ability to appreciate the rural character, feel like they have the peace. And those were all like reviewed according to our codes by the planning board. They had conditions placed on them. So there's both an enforcement component and just a number of, it's especially over the summer uses. So I guess I'm curious, when you were talking about resourcing the planning board and the process, if you think that there's anything that's causing this issue in our code that might complicate things or maybe is making it hard to enforce, or if you had any thoughts about that.
Well,
'Cause I thought you started to say something about the code itself, and so that's.
I think the enforcement itself is spotty. I think that, in the code, and I haven't read it since it was first adopted in 2006 or so. There are a lot of places where there are two areas that are seemingly contradictory. I think that the town in general is afraid of being sued. And there might be a tendency to approve things that might upset people or not upset people or whatever. But I think that if I think I know where you're going with this, is what would we do to make sure that the quality of life is maintained? I think there's a lot of common sense things. I think that on the next code revision, those types of things should be addressed. I think that we also have to make sure that the current codes are enforced, and that the penalties are meaningful enough to enforce compliance rather than, there's a $10 fine for whatever. But I think that we have to give more teeth to the enforcement side of the equation.
Okay. Any other questions? Do you have questions for us?
No. I think I was here during the previous session, and your explanation about timetable and everything, so it's there, so.
Oh, yeah, okay, that was your only question, yeah.
What specific projects would you want to start on
Oh.
day one?
Oh. I don't know. I think that's a good question. I think that the community preservation fund, and possibly the affordable housing fund would probably be the most important in terms of long-term effect on the town and availability. Okay. Thank you for sacrificing your Sunday morning.
Yeah, thank you for doing the same and for adjusting your schedule.
Oh,
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to see you.
No, we have a cancellation.
We're gonna talk about.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yes, of course.
See ya.
See ya. We'll be adjourning soon.
It's gonna save the download for after. Hey, are you heading over there? Oh, you are, okay, okay. I'm sorry, I thought I said 10, but I could have been mistaken. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, all right, thanks.
I will be working on getting all of your backup into the shared folders and sent to you guys today.
No, not unless they want a screaming 2-year-old doing an improv performance.
Oh, there will be.
There will be.
There
How you
will
have
already be one
multiples?
there.
3-year-old.
Maybe two. Maybe two there.
And then I'm not sure I want Bye Bye Birdie, because my 2-year-old would just like pick that up.
Fine.
Bye Bye
Oh, yeah, one of my favorites.
You guys should have the town board in town.
We have,
Oh my God,
I think there needs to be like
every year.
a like analog where the town board kids are just running the meeting.
Oh my gosh, can we please?
And we can put on
Our April meeting.
Be a lot of
First April meeting.
a lot of boogers.
Just them with animal practice.
stuff that's just like falling out.
Oh, So we are able to adjourn early today because we had someone withdraw. I wanted to first, I thought it would be good to just talk about the 4th interview and whether it can happen Thursday at 5:30.
Yes.
Yes, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so because this is a special meeting and I'll just call that meeting, I'll call that special meeting. Let's see, is that 72 hours? Yeah, I'll call that special meeting tomorrow. Just a reminder, Thursday, we have 3 public hearings. And then all the unfinished business. So that'll
Go
be,
today too, can't you?
I can, yeah. But it won't.
It doesn't have to be an hour.
Yeah, I can post. Yes, yeah, I'll schedule that, reconfirm, but, so, and then I just thought I wanted to, we're public streaming, but did you guys wanna have any sort of download or discussion about, the interviews so far?
I would personally prefer to wait until we've heard from everyone. I don't want to discuss. Prematurely and then see the candidate, so.
I agree with Michael. I'd like to discuss all at once we interview the 4th, if that's okay. I feel like we did that last. Not with the town board, but we did that with one of the boards where we interviewed in 2 sections and it got very confusing when we went to make the appointment last. It actually might have been 2 years.
It was
ago.
2 years
When Adam was
ago,
on the board. Yeah, when
yeah.
Adam missed half of them, there was only me and Michael were the only consistent ones in all the interviews, so everyone had to go back to us, I think, for info, so, but I would, I agree.
Yeah, I don't have a strong
Everyone's
opinion.
cool with
What happens with a tie hypothetically?
It fails,
It
ties or
fails,
fails.
So we have to keep going until, or we have to start the process over again, re-interview?
We just.
Someone have to
started
make another
board
appointment.
members until-
Make appointments until we got consensus.
Yeah, I think it would be, so. Tie is a fail, if we're not able to have. Consensus, we would either, the other option, I don't know what the time deadline is, if we don't make a decision, the state makes it for us. And I don't actually know what the time deadline for that is. But that,
Of who applied, you mean?
no, they
Oh,
just
it's-
can appoint someone.
Some person.
Yeah. So I'll find out what that time is, but
But
that,
that use it shuffle? And the state picks?
I think it's the governor makes the
Random.
appointment.
Some
Wow.
random.
So like, I almost don't want to, I'm so curious who you pick, I just don't want to now just to find out.
But it might, I don't know what the time deadline is. Hopefully it would come to that.
Option last year, we didn't know there was.
So, but because there's an election
Yeah.
and, you know, it's,
Oh, that's.
we're only talking about 8 months to term, so we might. I'm not entirely sure, but that is what is supposed to happen if we can't make a decision. There is a plan in the
There is
event
a
that a
down
town
effect.
board cannot come to consensus on that. So on that, I did wanna ask what, given what we've experienced so far, what should our timeline be for the appointment? Like, should we try to do it at our March meeting? Or should we, any thoughts?
Do we all feel like we can talk at the next, we're gonna have enough time to talk through it as part of the.
That's good.
That's
And I
what
need to get, I'd like to get clarification on whether or not it has to be in public, which I think it does, but we should have a session where we do discuss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm wondering how, if we have time on the agenda to discuss or not later that night. I'm also comfortable if we're going, if we plan on making the appointment, having the discussion earlier in the night on our March meeting, I think. As long as we have some time where we all can go back and forth and express, you know what I mean? I think we need a solid 30 or 45 minutes of discussion of it, and then. But I think that I could be, after a discussion, able to vote the same day with us,
Yeah.
if that makes sense, if we
I-
don't have time next week.
I definitely leaning towards getting this filled ASAP, even if it means coming marathon meeting or making another special meeting. I think we'll be able to download after Thursday.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah, if we don't have enough time Thursday, like, I also don't wanna hold it up, that's why I'm like, if we have to discuss on the fall, on our March meeting, and then just do the appointment at like the end of the meeting after discussion, like.
I think it's
something-
easily the
Yeah.
most important thing that we have personally.
Yes, it's, this board has worked, it's been much easier, and it's also only been, what, 5 meetings of us with this rendition of the board, but. Last year, we won like 2, almost 3 months, I think it was, before we had that appointment we had someone seated, and it has not been as challenging this time, but it's also like only. We have a much better, easier meeting process and stuff, but I do agree on the importance of it, it was just much. I guess it was just much more noticeable last time because it was a longer gap of not having someone and more schedule and conflicts and members, so, but I agree.
In terms of what you were just saying, are you saying you want to make the appointment this Thursday or if our March? Or by our March meeting? I guess I'm curious if you guys want to try and make the appointment on Thursday or if you.
If we have
What-
consensus, I would be fine with that. Right?
Yeah,
Make a
so
decision.
we'd have to have the discussion before we would know that.
Yeah, I guess it comes down to if we have time to discuss
Okay,
on Thursday, to
Yeah.
not, because we do have 3 public hearings, which already might turn into a marathon.
we'll see.
But
I
we'll
don't
see if it-
I don't know. The county and comment was like, you know, there's not like a lot to. So I can work in, but I can work in a discussion. And then I have a placeholder for appointments in the draft agenda that I circulated yesterday. So we could do that, but if we feel like in that initial discussion, we might need, the 2
Yeah, the
weeks,
2 weeks.
then we'll plan on making the appointment at the March 13th meeting.
That sounds good. to me. You
Okay.
guys? Good.
Okay,
Cool.
all right, with that.
Motion, ready, you ready?
Hold on, let me get my-
You know, the agenda is official. Motion to adjourn at 1:54.
Second.
Is that the actual time? What do you
Or
read?
12:54, sorry.
12:55.
Five.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained? Motion carries. Okay.